Welcome to Music Theory in One Lesson, part of the Music Theory in One worksheet series in case you're interested in purchasing that for your classroom or music studio. This is notation lesson number 1, staff, notes, and pitch. You may have noticed that music is written on 5 lines called a staff. The 5 lines of the staff are numbered from the bottom to the top like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In between the lines are also 4 spaces, which are also numbered from the bottom to the top: 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you may be wondering, why do we start from the bottom? The reason is because notes represent pitches. Pitch meaning how low or high a note sounds. Notes that are low, like this one, are written lower on the staff, and notes that are high, like this one, are written higher on the staff. So that is why we start at the bottom and go to the top. Now let's learn to draw some notes. When you draw notes, you want to make sure that you draw them neatly so that they're clear and aren't confusing to read. For instance, when you draw notes on lines, you want to make sure the line goes right through the middle of the note like this. You also want to make sure that you don't make them too big. If they get too big, they could touch another line and start looking like a note on a space. And then you're not sure if it's a note on a space that accidentally crossed the line or the other way around. So you don't want that, so don't be afraid to erase your notes and try again. It's not easy writing on a pad with the stylus, so there we go. And we'll finish it off. There. Now when you draw notes on spaces, you want to be careful that you don't cross any lines like that. And again, if you make them too big, they start to look confusing. So that's not a good one. So let's erase that and try again. There we go. So now we have a note on line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and line 5, and we have a note on space 1, space 2, space 3, and space 4. Before we go on, I want to show you 2 more notes. One here, and one up here. These notes are called the space below the staff and the space above the staff. So you should spend some time practicing drawing your space notes and line notes neatly, and you should also practice doing this: drawing consecutive notes, or in other words, notes that go in stepwise order up and down. So let's start here on the note that's the space below the staff. Now when we draw consecutive notes, we always have to remember to alternate lines and spaces. So if we're going up in pitch and we start on a space, the next note has to be on a line. So the next note after this note is on line 1. So after a line we need a space, so the next note is on space 1. And after that we need a line, so we're on line 2, and then space 2, and so on. And we're going to stop right here on the space above the staff. And then we can practice drawing them back down. Always remembering to alternate lines and spaces. Whoops. And drawing them clearly. And there we go. So this is really, really good practice. So make sure you do this exercise a few times. Alright, now let's have a quiz. What would you do if you were asked to draw a note on space 2? Well, hopefully you wouldn't draw it here, because that is the second space from the top. And we all know that we have to start from the bottom when we count, which puts us here. 1, 2, in this space right here. Next, let's try line 3. So we know we have to start at the bottom. 1, 2, 3. We can draw our note right here. Now, before we go on, you'll remember that we said that notes that are low are written lower on the staff, and notes that are high are written higher on the staff. So can you tell if this second note is higher or lower than the first note? Hopefully you said higher. Now let's try space 4. So again, counting up from the bottom, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, is this note higher or lower than the note before? Again, it's pretty obvious. It's much higher. Lastly, let's try line 1. Hopefully you don't think that line 1 is way up here, because line 1, of course, is down here at the bottom. Now, is this note higher or lower than the one before? Of course, it's pretty obvious that it's much, much lower. Now let's see if you can tell which line or space these notes are on. Let's look at the first note. Hopefully you know that that's not line 1, but it's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about the next note? Let's count from the bottom. 1, 2, 3. That's space 3. Now, is this note higher or lower than the note before? It is lower. Next note is on line 1, 2, 3, 4. And is it higher or lower than the note before? It is higher. And finally, the last note. Do you remember what this note is called? Hopefully you remember that it's called the space below the staff. And is this note higher or lower than the note before it? It is a lot lower. Good job. Thank you for joining us on Music Theory in One Lesson, Notation Lesson number 1. Part of the Music Theory in One Worksheet series, in case you're interested in purchasing that for your classroom or music studio. Our next lesson will be Notation Lesson number 2, the Note Circle, which is a really handy exercise to do before you start getting into naming notes and doing more advanced theory. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.